Hello, welcome to 21 This Week. I'm Susan Helton, filling in for Casey Aiken, who's celebrating his son's birthday this weekend. This week, an interview with Larry Hogan, Republican candidate for governor, Montgomery County liquor monopoly, and the Sterling Clippers caper. Joining us today to discuss these topics and more is a panel of political observers to share their insight. Democratic political strategist Rich Parsons, Gene Roesser, former Republican state senator, Breitbart news contributor Eric Cary, and Henry Hailstock, past president of the Montgomery County branch NAACP. Stay tuned after this short break for the interview Casey did last week with Larry Hogan, a Republican candidate for governor.
This week in our series of political profiles, we're sitting down with Republican candidate for governor, Larry Hogan. Welcome, Mr. Hogan. Thank you for taking the time to meet with us today.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
The purpose of this series of interviews is to introduce the viewers of Montgomery Community Media to candidates who are running for state office, particularly those from other counties, not Montgomery County. Now, the Baltimore Sun describes you as a businessman and a former cabinet official. Is that a fair description? And why are you running for governor?
Well, it's a pretty fair description, and I've spent most of my life in the private sector. I did spend 4 years. I left my business to go serve in the Ehrlich administration, but for the past 25 years, I founded and have built a successful business that has brought hundreds of companies and thousands of jobs into the state. Why am I running? I'm a lifelong Marylander who loves this state, and I really felt as if we were way off track, heading in the wrong direction, and thought it was important for somebody to step up. I think that an overwhelming majority of Marylanders are unhappy with the current leadership in Annapolis, and they'd like to see us go in a different direction. I didn't really have any desire to be something, but I felt an overwhelming obligation that I needed to do something.
Well, I get the sense from looking at your campaign that it's more about economic issues than social issues or other types of issues. And from your website, you state that there are 31,000 taxpayers who've left Maryland for better opportunities,
Yeah.
6,500 job creators who have closed shop in Maryland, and 180,000 remain unemployed. How will you as governor try to fix those problems?
Well, I'll tell you how the problem started and then how we're going to fix them. Since our administration left, the current folks that are in Annapolis, the monopoly that controls all the decisions in Annapolis, has increased spending by $10 billion, by 35%. In order to pay for all that spending, they pushed 40 consecutive tax hikes that have taken an additional $9.5 billion out of the pockets of struggling Maryland families and small businesses. It's caused a devastating impact on our economy. We've lost 10 of our 13 Fortune 500 companies, 6,500 small businesses, more than 100,000 jobs, and we're driving taxpayers out. Our group, Change Maryland, which I founded, this nonpartisan organization, 3 years ago. We did all these economic studies, and we did the taxpayer exodus study, because everywhere I went, I was hearing people say, as soon as we can sell our house, we're moving. As soon as we can find another job, we're leaving. As soon as we retire, we're leaving. I heard people say, we love the state of Maryland, but we can't afford to stay here anymore. So it's basically, there's 3 self-inflicted wounds that have caused these problems. Number 1 is an anti-business climate in Maryland, where we rank 41st out of 50 states in business friendliness, and that starts from the top. Number 2 is the tax structure. We're the 7th highest tax state in the nation. We've just increased taxes by, the average Maryland family now pays $4,600 more per year. It's caused this mass exodus, people voting with their feet and heading for the exits. So we've got to reverse all those things. And third, it's the overburdensome and complicated and constantly changing regulatory environment that has caused a lot of our businesses also to not be able to make decisions, and people are just heading for the exits. Here in Montgomery County, you see taillights heading into Virginia every morning. That's where all the jobs and businesses are going.
Well, one of the struggles that we have in Montgomery County, and Howie Dennis, who was a Republican state representative as well as a Montgomery County councilman, says, here in Montgomery County, we love our programs, but we hate our taxes. And the state's facing the same dilemma. I mean, there's certainly a large amount of social spending going on and spending in general that Marylanders seem to want.
Right.
So how do you give them the services they want, but also in a way that it's more affordable?
Well, here's the problem. The problem is we're losing all of the producers. We're losing all the big companies, all the small companies, and a whole bunch of the taxpayers. So even though we keep raising taxes 40 times, the revenues are coming down. We're having less money available to pay for social services, to pay for very much needed programs and services. So our whole focus needs to be on restoring Maryland's economy. My focus is on jobs, middle-class families, and restoring our economy. We have to bring the businesses back to Maryland because they're the ones that provide the jobs. It's not the wealthy business owner who moved to Virginia that's getting hurt. It's the 100,000 people that have lost their jobs, and the state isn't collecting the revenue anymore. Virginia now has all those revenues coming in, so they can provide better services than Maryland does.
All right, well, I want to explore a couple of other topics because they are important to Maryland voters. First of all is the environment. And there are problems regarding natural resources of the state, and there's a difference of opinion, especially on hydraulic fracking in western Maryland, and also on Cove Point, whether that should be developed as an export terminal, because the Chesapeake Bay is considered a pristine environmental resource for the entire state. What's your position on those?
I agree that the Chesapeake Bay is critically important. We've got to do everything we can to clean up the bay. Most of the problem is coming down the Conowingo Dam and the Susquehanna River, and we're having to pay for the cleanup of states like Pennsylvania and New York who are sending all this stuff downstream. I think we ought to be standing up for Maryland first. I think we ought to do what Virginia and some other states, standing up to the EPA. I think we ought to be forcing these other states to pay their fair share and instead of trying to place it all on as a burden on struggling Maryland families and small businesses. With respect to Western Maryland and the natural gas, we have one of the largest reserves of natural gas in the world here in Maryland. The surrounding states, their economies are booming as a result of the exporting of this natural gas that we've got here in Maryland. We've had tons of time to study it. I want to make sure we do anything in an environmentally sensitive way. I think we've got to finish the report and get it done and stop the stonewalling, and then make a reasonable decision based on the facts that come out. But I'm for clean energy, and it's something that gets us off of relying on OPEC. And I think clean natural gas is something, if we can do it in an environmentally sensitive way, is something that's going to be great for Maryland and great for Western Maryland, especially.
We're running out of time, so I want to go over a couple more topics. One is, in the last session of the General Assembly, they did not address the problems of health care, even though the health care rollout was a huge problem. How are you going to fix it?
Well, this is probably the thing that has, after taxes, it has most Marylanders so outraged. We have wasted nearly $300 million on a website that doesn't work, and 75,000 Marylanders have lost their health care coverage. We have people contacting us at our headquarters saying, I'm a cancer patient. I've lost my health care coverage. We tried for months to sign up on this website that doesn't work. Now we're talking about spending another $60 million to rent a site from Connecticut. Here's what Virginia did. Virginia said, you know what? We have great private sector exchanges that can take care of this. And if you want to go on Obamacare, you go to the federal site. It works just as well. Virginia has signed up 3 times as many people as Maryland has for our $300 million.
We got time for one more question, and that's because your vice presidential candidate, Boyd Rutherford, was a regular panelist on our show. Yeah. What does Boyd bring to your campaign?
He's a terrific guy. He's not quite ready for being vice president yet, but lieutenant governor. He's a good friend. He's a guy. I knew that turning Maryland around was going to require an enormous effort, and I needed to find the most capable, most experienced partner I could. And Boyd and I served as cabinet secretaries together in the Ehrlich administration. He went on to be assistant secretary of agriculture in the Bush administration. He helped run the GSA. But like me, we both have diverse private sector experience as well. He's a small businessman and an attorney and a terrific guy. He's going to help me turn Maryland around.
Well, I'm glad to hear it, and we'll end on that happy note because we have to take a hard break now. And I want to thank Mr. Hogan for being here today, and stay tuned for more of our panel when we come back from this short break.
Welcome back. Now, unless you've been living under a rock or on a deserted island, you've heard the name of Donald Sterling, the billionaire owner of the Clippers basketball team, who was exposed as a moronic, deeply seated serial rapist and sexual harasser over and over and over in print, online, on the radio, and television this past week. At this point, the only supporter Sterling appears to still have is Donald Trump, who blamed it all on a bad girlfriend. Now, Gene, this all started when a recorded conversation between Sterling and his ex-Afro-Mexican mistress was released, instructing her to stay away from minorities in public and to not bring them to Clippers games. Sterling has admitted it was him on the tape, and the unraveling of the relationship urged on by the wife of over 50 years was an effort to take back expensive cars, a mansion, and other lavish gifts he gave to his girlfriend. What does this relation say today about women in the 21st century?
To me, it says that truth is stranger than fiction, and that it certainly is a sad commentary on these particular women, and it certainly doesn't reflect most women today.
Like
for
you and
sure.
me, Jean.
Yes, exactly.
That's it.
I also just want to point out that Sterling was 100% wrong, and Commissioner Silver was 100% right.
Absolutely.
Now, Eric, in a sport that's dominated by approximately 80% African American players, the action by Commissioner Silver has been swift, severe, and appears to be supported by the owners, 3/4 of whom must vote in favor of the commissioner's proposal to force Sterling to sell the Clippers. Was the penalty for Sterling appropriate and just?
Very much so. I mean, you got to look at it. I mean, if your commodity is water, you don't turn up the heat in the pan to make it evaporate. And this is exactly what he was doing. And some of the language that he used in the tape was very disturbing. And the fact is, where he made the comment, I give them cars, them homes, jewelry, and all this other stuff. Let's not forget this, folks. They earn that money. They earn that. And when you look at a lot of these athletes, I ran in the West Unseld a few years ago here locally at one of the stores. The arthritis, all the other, the injuries and problems that come up later in life. I'm a former athlete. I have arthritis. I go through traction almost 3 days a week because I have spinal stenosis. And this is all because of wear and tear of playing football and basketball for years. So, is it correct? Yes, because you got to protect the interest of all the other owners and all the other players, because the players are ready to basically just walk out of the playoffs unless there was a clear decision made by management.
Well, he knew what he was doing. I mean, it's a consortium, and they have the right, based on the contract that all of them signed, to do what they did to him.
Well, now, Henry, Sterling was in line to get a second award from the Los Angeles NAACP for his leadership, but it was dropped. I should also note that the president of the LA NAACP branch has now resigned. One journalist has described it that the Los Angeles NAACP, and I quote, lent a blind eye, deaf ear, and bald head to Sterling. How can such a flawed, horrendous, racist person get such accolades, or is it just money, money, money?
First of all, we all had bad cousins in our family, so you have to understand that. Secondly, I think the writer was being a little prejudiced by talking about people with bald heads.
I agree with Henry on that.
Thirdly, you have to look at people who are locally doing things to help themselves and help others by, excuse me, ladies, prostituting themselves for either accolades, money, or status. And I think this is basically the case. And I think he did the appropriate thing by resigning as president of that local branch.
Well, now, Rich, there's a local connection to this story. And according to Frank DeFord, for many of us have probably heard him, he's a native of Maryland. And he's an author, ESPN, HBO, and NPR journalist who's convinced that this is just the start of a broader conversation we're going to have about race and sports. However, DeFord believes that the next shoe to drop will be a demand by the football commissioner for Dan Snyder to change the name of the Redskins that's now considered not only racially insensitive, it's a moniker filled with bigotry. Is this going to happen, Rich?
Well, I don't think so. On the one hand, you've got a case where every thinking human being on the planet can see blatant racism and hate speech in the case of the Clippers incident. I say all thinking humans. I'm not including Donald Trump in that, obviously, but everyone else.
He doesn't think.
Right. The whole Redskins issue, I think the contractual relationship among the NFL owners is quite different than in the NBA. I don't think there's the same opportunity to force Dan Snyder to do anything Dan Snyder doesn't want to do. And I also think, I've heard a lot of conflicting data. There are some tribes that really think Redskins is offensive, and apparently there are a lot of Native Americans who either don't really care about the issue or don't feel that way. I'd like to see a little bit more detailed conversation. I don't think it's nearly as clear-cut as the comments that were made in LA.
You're absolutely right in that case, but it's easy to change it, to something that's close and without changing the logos or anything else by, the Washington
Another
Braves,
Indian name, right? Yeah,
something
there
like
could
that.
be something that's not offensive to anybody.
And as someone
But
said,
I don't know how you can force Dan Snyder
someone
to do
said
that.
you
That's the
can
issue.
leave Redskins but change it to apples or
No,
potatoes.
That's too cute by
that's
half.
too ridiculous.
I'm being facetious.
That's-
But they could have
created
war
ridiculous.
chiefs, or they could have something that's not perceived
I
as
think also
derogatory,
the biggest issue is that no one really thought of it being offensive until the last 5 or 6 years.
Right.
And basically how they carried themselves. Now, the Washington Redskins went through a discriminatory process over the tenure of their ownership up until the last, I guess, 15 so odd years, primarily because they didn't have African American athletes totally in there now.
Well,
But
I-
it has changed.
I don't think we should compare the Snyder situation with the Sterling situation.
Well, what is
It's-
going to
but-
come?
but-
What is going to
but
come of
I
the
think
Sterling
eventually,
situation?
I want to address Snyder right now. I do think the pressure may be increased on Snyder to change the name. This issue, I don't think is going to go away.
No.
And I think eventually,
happen.
it's going to happen. Yes.
So what is going to be the result, though? We're running out of time. What's going to be the result of this whole Clippers caper?
Sterling is eventually going to be forced to sell the team, period.
Even with a lot of litigation, he supposedly
He can
is
do
very
all he
rich.
wants of litigation, but when you have 32 owners and 3/4 of them are voting to do so, it's going to be done. And this is not a precedent, because if you look back at the lady that owned the Dodgers, okay, what happened to her? She was forced to sell the team.
But
I
that
think
was
it's a-
20 years ago, and it was the Cardinals. It was Marchot.
But
Okay.
you also have to look at the what's going on right now. What almost happened the other night, where the players were going to refuse to play. If he does not end up going away, the players will go away.
Well, and
Well, the owners do not really have to play the team.
Right.
Every time they're scheduled, they can tell their team not to show up.
Well, I think we're probably going to talk about this more. I have never heard of one topic. It makes Clive Bundy seem pale now in comparison, But anyway, so every decade or so, we're going to finish up before we get cut out of time. Every decade or so, the monopoly by Montgomery County of the liquor department comes to the forefront. It's happening again just in time for the 2014 elections. And individuals pressing for the county to get out of the liquor business say the selection would be better. Opponents say that the department brings in millions of revenue. We've only got like 2 minutes left. So, Jean, you're familiar with revenue streams. Is this a good thing to keep the liquor department?
Oh, back when I was in office, I was really against a change in the Department of Liquor Control over their jurisdiction. I'm now kind of tilting toward privatization, because I don't think it will. I think it may well increase the revenue stream with more efficiency, and liquor, no matter what's going to make money. It's an anchor in any shopping center.
We got 30 seconds left.
Actually,
What's the real story?
I think Jean is right, and the real story is this conflict between the good of the consumers and ultimately the voters, which I think would support some move towards privatization, better selection, better pricing. I mean, that's what we're lacking right now.
Well, let's make sure.
And some of the folks within the county government and the union movement in particular, they want to keep it the way it is.
Well, let's make sure that when they do switch over, they do it in the proper way and
Right.
have the proper equipment for inventory and distribution. That's
That
one
they're
of the big
organized,
issues.
right?
The
And
other-
it is
the-
going on computerized as of July 1st for the county.
But
Well,
what-
we'll
one-
wait and see, because you can go computerized and have the wrong system. Okay,
Right.
I've dealt with that in retail.
We're
Okay,
dealing with that in
Make
healthcare.
sure.
But real quick, business owners are paying taxes to pay for their competition.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's one of the other things we don't need to forget.
Okay, and I suppose I should say right here, I am a Board of License Commissioners, or the Liquor Board, but we have nothing to do with distribution of liquor. We're going to be right back with parting shots. Stay tuned. And before we start parting shots, I would first like to congratulate Cynthia Rubenstein, our frequent panelist and the Executive Director of Passion for Learning, on the 10th anniversary of our organization that provides learning programs for needy children in the Silver Spring, Tacoma Park, and Wheaton area. Good job, Cynthia. And now with parting shots, Rich, you're first.
Okay, well, the good thing about election years, which this is that it gives us all a chance as citizens of the county to reward those leaders who step up and lead and bring some accountability to those who've kind of forgotten what that means. And unfortunately, this week, I have heard reports that a very important transportation project for the Up County and actually for the central part of Montgomery County, M83 or the Mid-County Highway, there's now indications from the Leggett administration that despite every single study that's been done showing that the master plan for this is essential and needs to be built and will bring major traffic relief to the whole area from Shady Grove Road up through Montgomery Village Avenue all the way up to Clarksburg, and all of the alternatives to this project don't actually work. Despite all that, there's indications now that the Leggett administration is going to deny all that and side with a handful of self-appointed, not in my backyard, NIMBY activists and oppose the construction of this road after 20 or more years of planning and development. This is not
Okay.
leadership, and it's time in an election year to hold some people accountable for failing to lead.
Jean, you're up.
This week, I attended the award ceremony of Montgomery SERVS, Montgomery County Volunteer Center. And the awardees were very, very varied. And I was particularly impressed with a 13-year-old Jason Ambu, who is a student at Eastern Middle School in Silver Spring, logged 400 volunteer hours, and Joe Howard, an environmental champion in Montgomery County, received an award, but all the awardees were
Eric,
meritorious.
we're running out of time, so you and Henry got to go fast.
Mine's real quick. Let's look at what's going on right now with the whole Benghazi deal. Right now, that whole deal is not just something out of the ordinary. We're looking at the Watergate tapes all over again with the emails and all the other discovery that's going on. And what's most important is, let's not forget the family of the four people that died in that incident. So it's not just something to easily be dismissed.
Okay, Henry, you're next.
We
and final for the week.
We passed this term of ACSO, Academics, Cultural, Technological, Scientific Olympics, for the NAACP locally. And I'm so proud of the number of students who won gold medals, who will be competing in Las Vegas come July. I can honestly say we need to support our African American students in the school system who are talented in all areas, not just in performance, but in academics and also entrepreneurship. So please support those people that you know who contributed in the ACSO competition and help them get to Las Vegas. Thank you.
Okay, well, I want to thank you, panel, for joining us. Today was an interesting day, and I want to thank the viewers. We look forward to seeing you again next week for Montgomery County's hardest-hitting political talk show. And until then, remember, you can follow us on Twitter, you can like us on Facebook, and you can watch us on YouTube. For 21 This Week, I'm Susan Heltemis. Bye for now.